college football season is a great time of year. Expect the polls, and you get the worst. Ohio State, they get a big win over Penn State, and they should be congratulated. But by no means should they be ranked ahead of Oklahoma. The polls and most everyone affiliated with the system dating back to last year's fiasco are awful. And this is why the system is still a joke. We'll go over that and the top NFL headlines from last week as the OFN on PSN starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to this Ourlads Football Network production. We are on a Monday, the 30th of October, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma. And if you've been listening to me for many years, you know exactly. This shouldn't be a surprise of my feelings when you take a look at the polls this week. And I'm not sure exactly how things are going to look with the rankings coming out. Tomorrow, I guess they have the college playoff system rankings. To tell you the truth, I'm not so sure that that's going to be that much of a difference. Because again, a lot of these people are they're the same type of people. You know, they're built from the same cloth. And to see Ohio State sit there at number 3 and Oklahoma at number 8, it's criminal. And I'm really serious when I use that word. It's criminal. The reason why it's criminal is because if the season ended today and Ohio State was in the playoff system, which would afford them the university, the Big Ten, and all that, all this extra money and marketing, and Oklahoma gets left aside, you don't think that's somebody that's robbing somebody? Sure does to me. Because now this is getting ridiculous. I mean, this is further proof of what we talked about last year with the whole Penn State situation. And you know what's even funny is on Mike and Mike this morning, Mike Greenberg and Golick, they say, and they both agreed, that the only way now that Penn State can get to the playoffs is if Ohio State loses twice. According to them, 2 ESPN main anchors. Okay, they're being hired to educate their ESPN audience with expert opinion. And as far as their expert opinion, Ohio State needs to lose twice. Oh, yeah, that's it. Penn State's done. There's no way, based on Ohio State's schedule, they're going to lose twice. So that's it. So Ohio State's they're going to win. They're going to win they're definitely going to wind up winning that division, and Penn State won't. Oh, really? Well, since when did that come about? What kind of system? I mean, as bad as the system is, there's getting to the Big Ten championship game isn't about a system. I mean, it's not about, or I should say, it's not about opinion. There are rules. There's certain criteria that you have to meet. And what that criteria is, if you look at Ohio State and Penn State right now, sure. I mean, we all understand that Penn State's got the loss now in the conference and Ohio State doesn't. I get that. But take a look at the schedule. Or take a look at the situation, the scenario. All right, now, let's just say that Penn State, because obviously they're not going to get to the playoffs anyway themselves if they don't win out. And that is that's a must. I completely agree with that. And do I believe that Ohio State? It's impossible to consider that Ohio State's going to lose twice. And first of all, not only is it impossible to believe that Ohio State's going to lose twice, or they have to lose twice, but do I believe, more importantly, that Penn State can't get into the playoffs even if Ohio State wins? Because remember, we've talked about this for weeks. I've readied this scenario in case this happened. First of all, can Ohio State lose twice? All right, chances are I can understand maybe they won't. I get that. You take a look, and they would have to lose to Iowa on the road or Michigan on the road and Michigan State. 2 out of those 3. Okay, is that going to happen? Probably not. All right, I get that. All right, so I 100% understand that. But but I'm not going to rule that out, but I understand that. Okay, but I will say this. Remember, we talked about this the other day. If Ohio State, when they play Michigan State on November 11th, and first of all, they're coming off an emotional win this week, so going to Iowa, and I have no idea when the game is, but it better be at night because Iowa loves to play, the top teams from the Big Ten tough at night. So if they're going to wind up, this game better be at night. So let's just say, here's an Iowa team that almost beat Penn State this year. And let's see. And remember, that was a last-second touchdown by Penn State. And then last year they beat Michigan in that game that was Michigan's. Well, it was their first loss. So let's just say, okay, that Ohio State, after an emotional win against Penn State, goes to Iowa. Iowa gets them. Okay. Then that means that the game at Michigan at the end of the season, which, by the way, they now have Brandon Peters. Big shock, right? Big shock that they eventually were going to do the inevitable and go to Brandon Peters. Because John O'Korn stunk. We've said it for weeks that this was going to happen anyway. And I don't want to hear analysts saying, oh, yeah, but Harbaugh did it at the right time because only he knows how good and prepared Peters is. So we trust that. Yeah, okay. Like we don't ever see backup guys come in and outperform their level of play on the field as opposed to the practice field. Sure, that doesn't happen. All right. So, and then let's say Michigan, because they're going to be a lot better with Peters. Now they're in a rivalry game. Now they're in a game where, because they lose to, and again, and by the way, I can even go to the Michigan State game for Ohio State. We talked about this the other day. Michigan State, if you take a look at this rivalry, this Michigan State-Ohio State game, last year Ohio State was favored by 21 and won by a point. Okay? In 2015, Michigan State was a 14-point dog in Columbus and beat Ohio State. All right? And let's see. Ohio State, number 2 at the time. Number 2. Sound familiar? Okay. 2014, Michigan State goes to Ohio State. Ohio State goes to Michigan State. And Michigan State at the time was the 7th-ranked team in the country. Higher ranked than Ohio State, by the way. Matter of fact, Michigan State was favored in the game by 4. And Michigan State lost. Ohio State won. Year before that, 2013. Big Ten title game. Ohio State's the favorite. Who wins? Michigan State. And I can even go to 2012 at Michigan State. Michigan State, a better team that year. Higher ranked. Favorite by 2. Who wins? Ohio State. What's my point? If you take a look at all these games, what's the common denominator? The dog winning. Didn't matter how big the spread was, any of that stuff. The dog was winning. So just to say that, oh, yeah, automatically these next 2 weeks, oh, yeah. Easy for Ohio State. Sure, like we haven't seen upsets before. So the point is it only takes one of those 2 games for them to lose. And now they got to go play Michigan in a situation where if you don't win that game, you're done. As long as Penn State runs the table. And now Penn State's in. Okay, now that's scenario number 1. Again, likely, no. Possible, yes. But I'm not going to sit here and even go crazy if somebody wants to say, yeah, but come on, realistically, they're going to lose 2 more times. If you want to play that game, fine. I'm not gonna argue with that. But what I will argue with is what is the difference between if Penn State were to run the table. Okay, now let's just say Ohio State loses 1 more game. Not 2, but 1. Penn State does not lose the rest of the season. All right, now keep this in mind. Ohio State is ranked 3rd. Penn State's 7th. All right, not that far off. So let's say Penn State, again, they've got to run the table. So this is the whole point you got to start off with. Penn State must run the table. And if they don't, then they shouldn't be there. So let's say they run the table. Okay? They end their season 11-1. Ohio State loses once. Okay? They lose once. And by the way, these teams that they're playing, Iowa, Michigan State, and Michigan, if you take a look at the rankings, Michigan State's 24th. Michigan and Iowa are not ranked. So any of those losses would not be good losses. They would not be top 10 losses, top 15 losses. They'd be okay losses. They're not bad teams, but they're not losing to a highly ranked team. So that means that if Ohio State loses that game, they should fall. They shouldn't just fall a spot or two, but they should fall. Maybe 5, 6, 7 spots. Who knows? But they'll fall because that'll be a second loss. 2 lost teams are only going to get the benefit of the doubt with a couple spots against a team that may not even be ranked. So if Ohio State loses again, and they lose to a team like that, where do you think they drop in the poll? Well, I know for sure where they'll drop, behind Penn State. Okay? So now all of a sudden, what do we get? Now we get the scenario in reverse from last year. We get Ohio State beating Penn State. We get Penn State with a better record and higher ranked. And then what happens? Ohio State goes to the Big Ten championship game. Who got to the playoff last year? We all know. The team that did not win the Big Ten championship got there. I don't even tell you the truth. I don't even care. It doesn't even. What's even. I mean, yeah. I mean, again, we could talk about wins and losses, and that's fine because that's comparable. That's same scenario. But I don't even want to talk about wins and losses. I just want to talk about the scenario of you don't win the Big Ten. So you remember last year? Remember what the committee said? That didn't matter. It didn't matter that Penn State won the division. Ohio State didn't. That did not matter. It didn't matter that Penn State went on to win the Big Ten championship game. Remember, I said this a few weeks ago. I said this even last week. That keep in mind the scenario that Penn State can still lose to Ohio State and make the playoffs. And this is how. Now, they're going to need a little help from Ohio State. All right? Because in my mind, because I do not believe, just like last year, that if the roles were reversed, that Ohio State would get robbed out of the playoffs and Penn State would jump over them. So even if Ohio State loses a game and Penn State wins out and Penn State's higher ranked than Ohio State, you will not see Penn State in the playoffs and Ohio State sitting out because Ohio State's Ohio State, Penn State's Penn State. That is the bias that we saw last year, and it is what we would see again this year. Now, let's take the scenario of that, because there's a couple of different ways this could work for Penn State. The most realistic way, because I do not believe Penn State's going to get the benefit of the doubt that Ohio State got last year. So even if they're higher ranked, one less loss, I don't think they're going to get. I think they'll get screwed. I just do. Now, maybe the committee will say to themselves, well, we can't do this. I mean, how bad would we look, really? If whatever, let's just say if 10th ranked if we give Ohio State the playoff and they're ranked 10th and Penn State gets shut out and they're whatever, 5th or something, well, we can't do that. Look what we did last year. Okay, maybe that'll happen. Maybe it'll happen. But the other more realistic way for Penn State is that that Ohio State beats Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, and both Ohio State and Penn State get to the playoffs. That I think is going to be more realistic because I don't think that. See, I'm gonna because I don't really see the scenario more. I mean, you could say, well, what if Wisconsin beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game? Couldn't it be Wisconsin and Penn State? I guess it could. I guess that could happen. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think about how how that scenario would work in my mind, but I don't know. I guess it's possible. I guess we can say that maybe it won't matter. I mean, maybe it matters more. Let's just put it this way. Maybe it matters more for Penn State if Ohio State doesn't lose in that scenario. All right. So if Ohio State were to go to the Big Ten championship game with no more losses, all right, and they end up whatever second ranked, and they beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game, we know they're in the playoffs. They deserve it. They're in. What do you do with Penn State? Are you going to, if Penn State doesn't lose, why can't Penn State get in? I mean, seriously, why couldn't they? I mean, you could really see Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and Penn State in playoffs. So I'm giving you these scenarios that the Green brothers don't want to give you because they don't spend enough time thinking about it, and they really just don't even understand what they're talking about anyway. But there's a lot of different scenarios here that we can go over that now are again, that's why I'm saying the one that probably is the most likely, if Ohio State just keeps getting better and better, is that Ohio State gets to the Big Ten championship game, doesn't lose again, beats Wisconsin, knocks them out. So that's not an issue for Penn State. Penn State runs the table, and they go, you know what, Ohio State's 2, Alabama's 1, or Georgia's 1. And you know what, we're going to go ahead and now, since this is as long as, let's say, Notre Dame loses again, and maybe Clemson, and then maybe Clemson loses again, and maybe Oklahoma loses again. It's really, I mean, it's not a whole lot of, and that's not weird to think. So this just narrow-mindedness about, oh, well, I don't see how Penn State's going to go to the playoffs. They're done. That's it. Their season's over. It's over. That's just ridiculous. There's 2 or 3 scenarios in which Penn State can get to the playoffs. All right, so maybe the easiest, most likely, Ohio State wins the Big Ten, runs the table, Penn State doesn't lose, has 1 loss, other teams lose around them, Penn State, Ohio State in the playoffs. There's no rule where you can't have 2 teams from the same conference in the playoffs. Okay. Scenario number 2. Ohio State. Let's just get Ohio State out of the way. Wisconsin beats Ohio State. Okay. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it's going to matter what Wisconsin does because right now, what are they ranked? They're ranked 4th. But let's just say Wisconsin runs the table because I really don't see Wisconsin losing. I mean, there's a couple of games that are tough for them, but they're both at home, so I don't think they're going to lose. So let's just say they don't lose. So Wisconsin doesn't lose. They win. They beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That's Ohio State's 2nd loss. Penn State just has 1, losing at the last second. Ohio State. Goodbye, Ohio State. Penn State's got the excuse to move up. Now Wisconsin's in undefeated, and Penn State also can move in. Okay, that's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3 is the reverse of last year. That Ohio State loses 1 other game. In this scenario that we're going over, they lose 1 other game. And Penn State doesn't lose, of course. And they get to the Big Ten championship game. They beat Wisconsin. And the roles are reversed. Okay, because they lost another game. They're now ranked 10th or 11th. Penn State's now ranked 5th. The committee looks in the mirror and goes, we can't possibly screw Penn State this time. We can't. We did it last year. We told everybody it didn't matter. Not winning the division, not winning the Big Ten championship game, all that didn't matter because Ohio State because if you looked at the records and the rankings, of course they want to the eye test for Ohio State because they won that game at Oklahoma last year on the road, which, as we all saw last year in the Big 12, that was no big deal. But according to them, it was. So those are 3 scenarios. 3. All right. So you've got the 3 scenarios. It is not over for Penn State by any means. Matter of fact, I would, as I always do, I would lay money that Penn State, as long as they keep playing the way they're playing. Now, I think they can play better because their defense was not good on Saturday. It wasn't good. They're not going to win the national championship right now playing like that. I really thought that their defense was better. I did. I mean, it wasn't just the stats; it was what I was watching. It's like now it's one game. It was on the road, and I'm willing to forgive that one game. But the problem is it kind of reminded me of the USC game last year. And if they can't stop these teams when they face, the big time teams, and they're going to have to do it twice. They have to go back to back and do it in the playoffs. I don't think now. Maybe if they go up against Georgia, it's possible because Georgia has got a young quarterback. They're not a high powered offense. Okay, I could see that. I can tell you the truth. I could see any team except probably again maybe Ohio State again, but I don't think that. Well, maybe they would have. Maybe they would play Ohio State in the playoffs again. I don't know. But then again, if they can if they could probably avoid playing like Ohio State and Alabama, then they can do it. Not either or, just both of them. I don't think their defense is capable of beating Ohio State and Alabama in a four, in one game and then the next game next week and surviving. That's asking way too much, putting way too much pressure on the offense. And you know what? The whole thing with this offense, anyway, the offensive line was just destroyed. Ohio State's defensive line was awesome, and it's the strength of their team. And look, Barrett, got to give him credit, played a great game, played the game of his life. Now, do I think Barrett's a Heisman contender? No. Do I think that if he goes up against Alabama, Georgia, or Clemson's defense, he'll get shut down? Yes. But I'm willing to give him a little bit more credit now and a little bit more hope that maybe he could play better than he did last year and at most of the times we've seen him in these big games. But we'll see. We can still got more games to go. Just do not think that Penn State is done. Because I'm telling you right now, the odds are that if Penn State doesn't lose a game the rest of the season, they will be in the playoffs. I mean, Notre Dame is definitely a stumbling block because they don't have a conference affiliation or anything like that. And that's also going to probably lead people to be saying, well, is that right? Is that fair? Well, you know what? I think so, based on their schedule this year. I think they played. The one negative is that they've played two really good teams, like top team. Well, actually, I'd say one really good team, Georgia, but they lost to them. See, that's the thing. You played really one highly ranked team and you lost to them, and you lost to them at home. You've played an underachieving USC team at home and beat them, and really that's it. I mean, Michigan State. Come on, I don't even want to get into Michigan State. So, but there's still 4 more games to go. And 2 of them are on the road. And I do think that if Notre Dame winds up running the table, that they would deserve a shot. Now, do I think that they're better than Penn State? No, but I think it would be close. I think both teams deserve it. This is the problem with the system. Both teams deserve to be in a playoffs as of right now today. And that is what's completely wrong with this whole nonsense about having, oh my goodness, we've changed it from 2 to 4 teams. Now everybody should be happy. We've added 2 teams. Oh, that should quiet the critics. I mean, any of those teams right now, if the season ended today, all of those 8 teams that are in the top 8 deserve to be in the playoffs. All 8. Because all 8 can win the national championship. And we have to eliminate 4 of them. Why? Well, just because we do. And we've got to nitpick this and we've got to eliminate that. Now, things will happen in the next few weeks. Some of these teams will lose and make it a little easier. I get that. But still, I mean, the 2-loss nonsense is what it is. It's nonsense. In no other sport, in no other situation, Do you have to rely on a voting system to get in? Because why? Because if you did, over 50% of the teams that have won championships wouldn't win them. Because if there was a voting system and you had to shrink, like in the NBA or the NFL or in any sport, you had to shrink it from 16 teams or 12 teams, whatever, to 4, over 50% of well, forget the NBA because the top teams always win. But or just forget basketball in general. But in hockey, in the NFL, and that's probably and baseball. Those are, and you could probably even talk about same thing in other sports. I mean, we could talk about it with NASCAR or golf, whatever, in any sport other than basketball. That'll make it simple. That if you had to shrink it down to 4 teams, I'm sorry, but if you take a look at the teams that have won, and the players that have won, and the overall athletes that have won championships over the years, a lot of them have not entered the end of their regular season as one of the top 4 teams. Nor should they have to. But Notre Dame, so, look, they're playing well. This is this is not going to be an easy game for Notre Dame this week against Wake Forest. We talked about that last week. I also mentioned that I think it's time that we start talking about Mike Elko. His name will now be more apparent this week because he's the former defensive coordinator at Wake Forest, who's done a great job with this Notre Dame defense. And he's going to look to stop John Walford, who had a great game with 5 touchdown passes in their win against Louisville. So Wake is playing really good football. And we know who's better. It's Notre Dame. But the way Wake is playing right now, and considering North Carolina State played most of the game without their top running back, who is really their speed back. I mean, North Carolina State does not have a lot of offensive weapons, like really difference makers. But their fast running back, their number one guy. He's their number one back. Now, Samuels is a pro prospect. He's going to be a really good pro. But he's not the speed guy in the backfield. And he was gone. And you take him out of the equation with a team that only has like a couple of guys, it's tough. And to expect North Carolina State to have scored more than 14, knowing how well Notre Dame's defense is playing. Like, well, here's an example. What if Notre Dame took out Josh Adams? Do you think Notre Dame is going to beat North Carolina State 35-14? If Adams is out of the game and North Carolina State is completely healthy in the game, they don't lose Hines? No. But that's the way it went. Those are the breaks. So Wake Forest is going to be just as tough, if not a tougher opponent, because of what happened with North Carolina State and their health in that game. So that will not be an easy game for Notre Dame. They should win. They'll probably win, but it shouldn't be an easy game. But look, give Notre Dame a lot of credit. Brian Kelly a lot of credit. What he's got going on here is a very simple formula. You know what it is? It's an Alabama formula. We're going to play really good defense. We're going to run the ball, and that's what we're going to do. And if we don't have to play a whole bunch of great teams, which Alabama doesn't play every year, they play like 2 games a year. That's usually tough. Maybe 3, and they usually lose 1. And then that's it. And we're Alabama, so we get into the playoffs, and then that's it. We take our chances. That's what Notre Dame's doing. And hey, that's a formula that you should try to copy. Oklahoma State, of course, have this big game coming up, so that's going to dictate another team right there. Now, I don't know what Ohio State fans would be rooting for, because they're already ranked ahead of Oklahoma. So at this point, I guess you're rooting for Oklahoma. I don't know, I guess, because if they beat Oklahoma State, then maybe Ohio State fans don't have to hear it about Oklahoma. Oh yeah, but they've lost a couple of games. That they don't count. But as long as Oklahoma keeps winning, I mean, Oklahoma's 8th right now, and if they beat a 12th ranked Oklahoma State team, and by the way, guess who's after that? TCU. So And this is it for Oklahoma. Now, they do have a Big 12 championship game this year. So it is possible. Now, of course, I would love it if they were played. Well, then again, I don't know if they need a rematch with Iowa State, but it's possible that they might take on Oklahoma State again in the Big 12 championship game. Could be TCU. Could be a rematch with TCU. I mean, bottom line is the next two teams that Oklahoma plays, they could be playing one of them again in a rematch. So let's say, because TCU's 10 and Oklahoma State's 11. So let's say Oklahoma in the next 2 weeks beats number 10 and number 11. And then they've already beaten number 3, Ohio State, at Ohio State. Okay. Now I wonder how much closer Oklahoma gets to Ohio State at that point. Because I think what the committee would want to do more than anything is put Oklahoma in the playoffs with Ohio State so you don't get people hammering them. Now, I do believe that Oklahoma is going to win these games. I really I'd like this team. I'm not saying that they're not flawed. They are. They're not a great team, but I don't think that really matters. You know, they are a good enough team with a premier quarterback, and this is football. And if that's all you have to do is have a good enough team with a premier quarterback, which is why Oklahoma went into Ohio State and won that game. See, McSorley did not play well, and that's McSorley. McSorley is not Baker Mayfield. McSorley is a good he's a good college quarterback, but he's not a great quarterback. He's not a pro. He's a good. He's the type of quarterback that you need for a team like that when you have yourself maybe the best player in college football in Saquon Barkley, and you have Gesicki, who's the best tight end next to Andrews in college football. So, and you've got decent receivers. So you got to just make a few plays every game. You make a few plays every game with that talent around you and a defense that was supposed to be better. And look, even if the defense played like that, if McSorley would have made a few plays, I mean, he made nothing. He did not play well, McSorley. If McSorley would have played like a normal game for him, they still would have won that game. But McSorley played poorly, and the defense was awful. And they still almost beat Ohio State. Because keep in mind, and by the way, that game, another reason why I think it's ridiculous that Ohio State, oh my goodness, let's bow and genuflect to the Buckeyes because they beat Penn State. Oh, well, wait a second. Why are we giving Penn State all these accolades? This is the same program that you ripped to shreds last year, and you wouldn't even give them credit. Remember, it was the eye test last year. But now all of a sudden, Penn State's a great team or something? Oh, but I guess they must have been for Ohio State to beat them. 19 penalties in the game. You had the kickoff return touchdown. I mean, Ohio State's special teams coverage is awful. You had Penn State, which had numerous opportunities to put that game away. They couldn't even punt one ball. They couldn't even punch it in at the end to end the game. With some really lousy, I don't know if it's bad play calling or McSorley making bad decisions on the zone read. And all of that ugliness in the game. But, hey, I guess Ohio State's great, right? They're an awesome team, man. Who lost? Who they lose to? Oh, yeah, they lost to Oklahoma. Oh, but Oklahoma lost to Iowa State. Yeah, but wait a second. Iowa State just beat TCU. And matter of fact, has Ohio State beaten 2 top 5 teams this year? No, Iowa State has. See, now that's the tricky situation now, isn't it? Because you go, well, wait a second. Iowa State beat Oklahoma, or Oklahoma lost to Iowa State. Yeah, but I mean, Iowa State is what are they? I mean, well, they are ranked 14th now. Matter of fact, they're the highest ranked 2-loss team. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't go, yeah, but Iowa State's not really that good. But well, they did beat Oklahoma. Yeah, but Oklahoma lost to Iowa State. They're not good, but Iowa State did beat TCU. Okay, see, that gets me all confused. when I have to start thinking about, well, this team beat that team, and that team lost to this team, and this team did this, and this. This is ridiculous. We shouldn't have to think about this stuff every year. And then you know what? It's just a matter of time. In the next few weeks, you're going to hear some of these people talk about, oh, well, they'll never be satisfied with 8 or 16 teams. They'll say if there are 16 teams that they'll complain, the 17th team will complain about not being in. Yeah, just like when we complain about the 60 whatever teams there are in college basketball, and we complain for a day, it's a little debate we have fun debating it, but we don't debate the teams getting into the college basketball tournament about, oh, I can't believe you didn't put that team in because that team has a chance to win the national championship. That's I mean, I don't even, that is very rare that we say that. It's usually just about, well, they deserve to be in because look at the teams that are on the bubble that we think they're better than. That's all that is. That's all that debate's on. This debate would be about, yes, if that team doesn't get in, it's because we believe that team deserves a shot to try and win a championship. That would be a real debate. And if you have 8 teams, just like you're seeing right here, any of these teams can win. Now, if you go 16, look, I don't think a 16-team playoff anyway would necessarily have to be the top 16 teams. See, I don't think that's the way it should be. What I think they would do or should do with 16 is I think they should have whatever. I'll just throw out there. I'll say 10 conference champion teams and then 6 at-larges. That's the way I think that should be. Because I think that's the only way to make it fun. Because then what you do is the teams that are, say, let's say there are, I don't know, 4 or 5 teams, you know, the Conference USA champ, the Sun Belt champ, those teams. Let's say there's 4 of them that are like that. Well, the top 4 teams, let's say, would get to play those teams first. So the unlikeliness that Alabama is going to lose, you know, to Troy, that kind of stuff. And you go, whoa, what's that about? Well, that's what we want to see as fans. We want to see David and Goliath. That's what we get in every sport. We get a 1-game elimination situation. And this, well, you know, that's college, like college basketball. That's what makes it so much fun. That's why everybody loves it. 1 game, David, Cinderella stories. Could it happen? And I'm not talking about, you know, 1 versus 16 in the college basketball tournament, because that is even more crazy to think a 16 seed would be the 1 seed in college basketball than a Sun Belt team beating a number 1. And the reason I say that is because look at Troy. I mean, look at what Troy did the last 2 years, almost beating Clemson last year and then beating LSU this year. So to think that a Sun Belt team couldn't miraculously upset an SEC, you know, number 1 ranked team in that kind of a scenario, would it happen? No. But is it more likely than 16 beating 1 in a college basketball tournament? Yes. And that is why we would have a little bit of fun with it. We would enjoy it. And those teams would deserve it. They would deserve the ranking and playing those types of teams and letting the other teams, you know, 5, 6 ranked teams battle it out between 10, 11 ranked teams that are good teams. Let them fight for an extra, because they would have to basically play good teams and have to win an extra big game in order to prove themselves more, just like you should in a normal playoff situation. Now, Clemson, who I still believe can win the national championship this year, and being that they proved themselves last year, even though our boy Deshaun Watson is no longer there, still with their great defense, they're going to get recognition. Now, the problem is their schedule. They're not playing anybody highly ranked anymore. That is a little bit of a problem. So for their sake, you know, they're going to want either Virginia Tech or Miami, whoever wins the game this week, to not lose again. And Virginia Tech, you know, they got a couple of games that aren't going to be easy. But, you know, they'll be favored in all of them. But it won't be easy. I mean, especially next week. Because if they beat Miami and then have to go back-to-back on the road against Georgia Tech without having that extra week to prepare for the Yellow Jackets triple option, it's not going to be easy. For Miami, it's not going to be easy if they beat Virginia Tech because they got Notre Dame next week, which would probably be, is the one of two top remaining games for Notre Dame, except for Stanford. So, but that's what you want to see if you're Clemson. You want to see the winner of next week's game running the table, so they're still highly ranked, because whoever wins that game, especially if it's Miami, they haven't lost yet. So let's say Miami beats Virginia Tech, which I don't know if they're going to do, but let's say they do, and they run the table, they're undefeated. I mean, that's perfect for Clemson, because now Miami would wind up somewhere around 6, maybe Clemson's like 5, and if Clemson beats an undefeated team at that point in the season, then the chances of them with one loss, with their reputation, making the Final Four, pretty good. So the scenarios are there for a lot of these teams. I think realistically, I'm probably looking at like Oklahoma State's probably. I don't really. And I say realistically, meaning how good do I really think these teams are, and are they capable of making the run? I would probably say Oklahoma State is the team outside the top 8 that has the best chance. I don't think Miami's that type of team. TCU, you know what I think about TCU. Virginia Tech. Yeah, so I that's it. Now, of course, look, the wild card, and I think that the chances are, though, it would probably take a lot for it to happen, would be Auburn. Because Auburn's lost 2 games, but if Auburn beats Georgia, not this week, but next week, and then beats Alabama at the end of the season, and gets to the SEC championship game because of it, and wins that, let's say they beat Georgia again. Now, I don't think any of that's going to happen. I'm just saying, and Auburn's all of a sudden beating Georgia twice, Auburn and Alabama. What do you think that's going to happen to their ranking? And then what about the possibilities of an SEC champion not making the playoffs? Oh my goodness, is that possible? So Auburn is still not out of it. I wish they had a quarterback I would trust, that I'd actually be a little bit more into that theory, but I don't. Because I just don't. I think when he goes up against both Alabama and Georgia's defense, Stidham's going to be he's going to be a wreck. And how about Iowa State, by the way? Was that awesome or what? We talked with Tommy Birch from the Des Moines Register last week, and I'm glad we did. That was awesome. Awesome to see. Great job by Matt Campbell and the program. And it wasn't one of those games where you just went, how'd they do it? They played solid, good football. David Montgomery's a nice running back. Lazard is a very impressive receiver. We're going to be talking a lot about before the draft. He's not going to be a high pick, but he's going to be a guy that's going to go somewhere early in the draft, early enough in the first few rounds. So we'll keep an eye on him. The whole quarterback story, the whole Joel Lanning story, it's a nice thing. And they're at Morgantown, by the way, this week. So very cool for them. And how about Khalil Tate in Arizona? My boy Khalil Tate keeps it going. And again, we had another conversation. What was it? Last week, right? I think it was last week. We spoke with Giglio about, and we talked. Not Giglio. Giglio's at NC State. Gimino. Anthony Gimino, the allsportstucson.com writer, and he's also the senior editor at Lindy's Football. So we talked to him about the Arizona football team and about Khalil Tate, and Tate did it again. I mean, he didn't have like a great game, but he had a good game. And Washington State, Falk was awful. Leach benched him, took in another kid. The kid played okay early, and then it was a turnover machine, and Arizona blew him out. So now Arizona's at USC this week, and USC finally played a game this year for the first time all year where they looked like last year's team. They woke up and finally looked like that team. It's too late, though. I mean, they're not going to help. They can run the table all they want, but I mean, and we'll find out. But look, they beat Arizona State, which helps them with the quest to go to the Pac-12 championship game. But so now it's up to Arizona. I mean, this is it. Arizona actually has a shot, but this is it. It's Arizona USC now, and whoever wins this game is going to wind up winning the Pac-12. It's wind up going to the Pac-12 championship game. So big game this week at Arizona at USC. In Central Florida, because South Florida, what an egg they laid. I mean, that was the team I remember earlier this season that I kept saying, yeah, they're not really playing well. I don't expect much. And then all of a sudden they started playing great. And I was like, well, okay, maybe they're legit. And then they go and lose to Houston. And Houston's just not very good this year. They're okay, but they're not like the way they were the last few years. So that was an ugly loss for South Florida. It didn't even look good. But so now it's Central Florida. So now Central Florida is the last like big group of 5 team left that has a shot. I mean, they're clearly in the lead now. I mean, they're miles ahead of everybody else for the opportunity to play in the big bowl. Now, will they get a realistic? Do they have any shot of making the playoffs? No. And that's because they didn't. I mean, blame them or blame somebody else, but they didn't have a big enough. I mean, the only team I guess they could have played that would have been from a major conference would have been the Georgia Tech game, but that game got postponed. I'm not even sure if they were playing that game. I don't think they are. So that's the bummer there. But still, and but anyway, if they go undefeated, this is my point about why there needs to be more teams in playoffs, because these types of teams that do everything on the schedule they're supposed to, and they go undefeated, and they don't get a chance. You don't even give them a Cinderella's chance, and it's raw. It's a raw deal, and it stinks. Okay, that's college football. Now in the NFL, remember last week on the show we talked about the situation where these players had been using excessive force with quarterbacks. We saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers. And I think we saw Mariota, the incident with Seattle about a month ago. And somebody else is in there, isn't it? Somebody else got hammered the other day. Oh, remember Alex Smith almost got and you can say what you want. I'm not sure Mitchell intended it or not, but whatever. But fact is that the point was, and we saw it again on Thursday night. Why are these defenders? What is it inside of them? This isn't the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. What is it about what they're doing for a living? Realizing what I mean, we've got a sport here that they're associated with. All right, it's they have their own little fraternity, and we've been dealing with this crap for the last couple of months. This whole protesting crap. And what's been the one constant in that? Oh, they're all united. That's the constant. They're united together. This united family of NFL players. So this united family of NFL players are so united with each other that they want to knock the opposition's quarterback's head off. For what reason? For what purpose? To win a football game? That's what you want to do? You can't beat the team without knocking the quarterback out? That's what this is about. Again, this isn't back in the 80s or the 70s or the 40s when guys weren't getting paid what they were getting paid, and that's just the way the sport was back then. The society's different nowadays. Do we like hitting? Of course we do. Do we need the hitting though with the quarterback like that? That's my only complaint. Because I mean, look, I don't want to see guys get injured any position. I don't want to see guys get injured and superstars leave. It's not good for the sport. It's actually terrible for the sport. That's another reason that this isn't making any sense to me. They what are they doing? What do they think? They think we want to see backup quarterbacks play. Is that what they think? Oh, let me knock this guy out. It's better for my team, so our team wins. And what? Nobody cares? Nobody watches because the games are awful? And if nobody watches and the ratings go down and the sponsorship goes down, well, then the owners make less money, and then you know what? You guys make less money. Use a little common sense, but they don't have any. So what do? We want to annihilate the quarterback. Why? Why do we want to annihilate the quarterback? I just don't. I don't understand that. What are we doing? That's like, I mean, really, if you think about any other sport, even hockey, with how physical it is, because hockey is more physical than football. Now, you think of hockey and you say, well, all right, they get physical and they're constantly doing what they're doing. But I don't ever see guys anymore. They used to, but they have evolved in hockey, which apparently the NFL players have not. But the hockey players and the league has evolved. And they realize how important it is to protect their players. So they have made a lot of different rule changes. They have made sure as best as they could. And even there are no more goons on teams. You don't get this. Sure, do they fight? Of course they still fight because it's a damn physical sport. But you don't see when they're fighting that the guy goes, oh, you know what? I'm going to fight their best player, and then I'm going to take my stick and I'm going to beat him over the head, and I hope he gets a concussion, or maybe I'll break his leg with it. Because you know why? Because it'll help us win. But that's basically what the NFL players are doing when they go to annihilate the quarterback. That's exactly what they're doing. Isn't no different than that. No different than a hockey player taking a stick over the head of another player, superstar. And it's no different than getting a premier player in the batter's box and the pitcher going and taking and throwing 100 miles an hour at the guy's head. And while he's being carted off to the hospital, he goes, well, what are you going to do? Hey, what are you going to do? And then they're all happy because, hey, he's out, man. He's out. I just threw that ball 100 miles an hour at his head. He's out. Hey, it helps us win. So what is the difference? There's no difference. So why do we have to have these players going kamikaze-like at quarterbacks? And I don't know what's worse. Is Kiko Alonso trying to excuse what he did, or the Bill Cowers and Deion Sanders of the world trying to be their apologists over it? I mean, those are the sort of things we said 15 years ago when times were different. But then again, that's when Bill Cowher coached and Deion Sanders played. Times have changed, gentlemen. We don't think like that anymore. Because 15 years ago, when a quarterback would get hit and there would be this discussion about a penalty or a fine or a suspension, we would kind of complain and go, oh, the quarterbacks, they're being babied. And we'd all kind of be the same way. Even I was guilty of it. Oh, yeah, come on. It's football. But we're not like that anymore. Nor should the NFL be like that anymore. And we shouldn't be apologizing for it anymore. And look, for Kiko Alonso to say, well, he was trying for the first down, he slid late, and therefore I couldn't, that's why I tackled him late. Now, you all saw the hit. Did you see Kiko Alonso tackle Joe Flacco or take his forearm and hammer him in Flacco's head? There's a big difference between a tackle, okay, because this is the word that they want to use. I was trying to tackle him, but he slid too late, so when I tackled him, it was too late. I couldn't stop my momentum. What tackle are you talking about? You're talking about that hammer you had for a weapon that you had over your head, and that you were about to, like Donkey Kong style. And what? It was just too late. There's nothing I can do about it. There's a big difference between a tackle and a forearm to the head. Okay, now if he would have had a wraparound tackle, that's what the movement is. I know it. I've been watching football my whole life. I know what a tackle is. Now, there's different forms of tackling. One-arm tackle, I'm gonna trip them tackle. But most people tackle with two hands. They wrap themselves around the offensive player's waist or their legs. That is a tackle. You do not go into a player, especially a quarterback, with your forearm and call that a tackle and say, well, what? So because Flacco was trying for the first down, hey, I'm allowed to stick my forearm in his face. See the mentality there? The forearm to the face is okay if he's trying to get a first down. Why? Why is that okay? Why is the forearm to the head okay if he's trying to get a first down? What are we doing? He's a quarterback. So whether or not you want to, there's no excuse for it. Because if you want to think that, well, it's not just the first down, it's, I don't know if he's going to try to square the two arms. Where are you wrapping around the quarterback to tackle him? This is going to go on for who knows how much longer. We're going to look back at this in a few years, and I'm going to remind everybody about this conversation. And I'm going to say, you see, I said that years ago, and nobody listened to me. Because this is going to end soon. And nobody's going to be apologizing for these idiots anymore. And I'm sorry, it makes no sense. It makes no sense for the fan. Who ultimately pays your salary? The fans. You know what? If more than 50% of the fans, to tell you the truth, I would even be surprised if more than 25% of the fans feel at this point in time that that's what they want to see. That they want to see defensive players hammering quarterbacks and knocking them out of the game. And since I know that's not the case, then it's just a matter of time before members of the media start getting that in their thick heads as well. And once they do, and nobody apologizes for them anymore, then the quicker we can get this over with. What a great game in Seattle. I mean, what can you say about Russell Wilson? I mean, look, Bill O'Brien actually came out and I read something where Bill O'Brien was he was like I don't know when he was apologizing, or I think that's what it was. It was like an apology about how, on Deshaun Watson on that last drive. And look, I didn't like the calls either, especially the last one. I was like, you can't hand the ball off to Lamar Miller on third down. I mean, if you're going to do at one time in one of those last three carries, Deshaun Watson has to hold on to that ball. So that I understand, okay? But what I don't want to hear is Bill O'Brien apologizing when the person who should be apologizing is Mike Vrabel, the defensive coordinator. Are you freaking kidding me? With that defense, how on earth, with less than a minute and a half left, the way the game had gone, the way Russell Wilson had constantly thrown the ball down the field against you, knowing that the quickest, easiest way to lose the game would be if you allowed a bomb. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, play prevent defense, but to allow, every situation is different. And in this situation, because they can run, and somebody needs to tell me why in the fourth quarter Houston kept falling for handoffs. I mean, I kept seeing Russell Wilson like fake handoffs and then roll out the other way, buy himself a couple extra seconds, and then throw the ball deep. And I'm saying to myself, why are they going for the fake handoff? They weren't running the ball. They couldn't run the ball. They haven't run the ball all season. Why would you even care about a run fake? But they did. But on that last big pass play, why on earth would Mike Vrabel allow one-on-one coverage for like a 50-yard bomb? What is this, college? Who allows one-on-one coverage for a 50-yard bomb in the NFL with a minute and a half left The team that you're defending is losing, and they have no timeouts. What sport are we in? Especially the way the game had gone. See, if this was a different situation, if the game was 13-10 and both teams were having a hard time throwing the ball, then I can see you going, hey, man, you beat me deep, beat me deep. It's just going to happen. But the way the game had gone, did anybody not think Russell Wilson was going to throw the ball deep and that the chances were likely that he was going to complete it unless Houston had some sort of normal defense back there? I'm sorry, but that was just terrible. Mike Vrabel, today, that kind of situation, depending on exactly what kind of a coach he is, if he's a good coach, okay, Mike, look, you made a mistake. Don't do it again. Let's not have this conversation again, Mike. Just, it happens to the best of us. Don't ever do that again. But if Mike Vrabel's a guy that, he's had some ups, he's had his downs, I might fire the guy. That's a fireable offense. You just can't do that. That's inexcusable. What are we doing here? You want to coach like that? Go to college. That's what they do in college. Go to college. But Deshaun Watson's awesome. He's awesome. And I know. I can't gloat about it enough. He's the man. And yes, I'm the man for saying he's the man. I'm the man for saying he was the man for months. I am the man. But no, he's the man. And it is really a shame that that J.J. Watt's hurt. Because, man, this team could have won a Super Bowl. And I would have looked like a genius. But you know what's going to happen? It'll be next year. That's usually the way it works with me. I get these predictions usually a year early. A lot. So I set it a year early, but you rest assured that you got odds for me for the Super Bowl next year for Houston. I'm a patient man. Give them to me. I want them. I'm taking them. And I'm not ruling them out this year either, by the way. I mean, they're going to win the division. And they're going to go to the playoffs. And when they get to the playoffs, with that kid, they can beat anybody. And that includes the Patriots. Now, do I think they have what it takes defensively at this point, without Merciless and Watt, to win a championship? Probably not. I mean, I still like the Eagles, and I still like the Eagles in the NFC. I mean, right now, and look, we got a whole half a season to go, so anything can happen. But the Eagles, they're playing awfully well. They're the best team in the East by far. With Aaron Rodgers out, they're better than any team in the North. And right now, they're better than the Saints. And forget Carolina and forget Atlanta. And as far as the West, Seattle would be the only team that would have a shot right now. Because Russell Wilson's awesome. And so you got Russell Wilson and you've got Carson Wentz, and there's your NFC Championship game. And in the AFC, there's still a little bit to be told between the Patriots, the Steelers, Houston, and Kansas City. A little bit more muddled in the AFC. All right, so that'll wrap it up. Thanks for checking in with us once again. We've got another great week of coverage here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Our next show is going to be on, I don't think we have a show till Thursdays. So Thursday, we've got our NFL preview week 9 with Tony Mejia. And then on Friday, we'll have our college football preview. Dan Shanka, we did some player profiles today, so they'll be available on demand in a few minutes. And I'll hopefully do some interviews later on in the week with some more writers. Not sure if we'll be able to get any players or coaches, but we'll try. And, of course, our fantasy coverage on Sunday mornings with Jamal and Dan. So we'll see you later in the week for more OFN coverage right here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And every live broadcast is available on demand same day on YouTube or iTunes under Prime Sports Network. So we'll see you next week, and every Monday right here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.